My father, Ghassan Elashi, was born in Gaza City, and he immigrated to the United States in the 70s, and 10 years later started a charity. He co-founded this charity, and it was called the Holy Land Foundation. Again, it was referred to many times today, and it became the largest Muslim charity in the US, and for more than a decade, the Holy Land Foundation gave food, clothes, medicine, basic humanitarian aid to Palestinians, as well as populations dispossessed by wars and natural disasters just all over the world. Then, 3 months after 9/11, the Bush administration shut down the Holy Land Foundation. The initial accusation was that the HLF was the face of Hamas in America. But when the indictment was released in 2004, which was 2.5 years after the charity was shut down, the accusations changed dramatically. Prosecutors actually could not find a single connection between the HLF and Hamas, and after sifting through thousands of documents and hundreds of wiretapped calls, they changed their narrative. My father and 4 other men, dubbed the Holy Land Five, were charged with giving material support in the form of humanitarian aid to Palestinian distribution centers called Zakah committees that prosecutors claimed were fronts for Hamas. The language they used was that these Zakah committees were, quote, controlled by or worked on behalf of Hamas. And somebody spoke about that earlier today, and how the material support law allows for, the vagueness of the language allows for such an argument. In addition to these McCarthy-esque accusations, prosecutors unsealed a list of 300 unindicted co-conspirators, including 3 major Muslim organizations, CARE, an advocacy group, who I saw not too long ago, Brother Nihad Awad, ISNA, an educational organization, and NATE, a trust that holds the deeds of mosques. The purpose of this list was to allow prosecutors to use the statement, like their statements in court, and just documents seized there and everything, without it being actually considered hearsay. And the individuals and the groups could not challenge, and I think are still not really able to challenge that designation. So back to the Holy Land Foundation trials. The first trial was actually in 2007, and prosecutors called their key witness to the stand, and it was an Israeli intelligence officer who testified under a pseudonym, which is unprecedented. But this man, who went by the name of Avi, claimed he could smell Hamas, and he argued that the HLF conspired to support Hamas by providing humanitarian aid to Palestinian families. So he admitted that that's what the HLF did, but they did it with the intention of secretly winning their hearts and minds and eventually encouraging them to be suicide bombers. So prosecutors not only, repeated these completely absurd arguments, but also used fear tactics by showing jurors scenes of suicide bombings, like scene upon scene upon scene, completely unaffiliated with the charity. And I believe they did the same thing with the Samuel Arian case and some other cases. Videos of children marching on a kindergarten stage, holding shoulder missiles. Of course, images meant to intimidate the jury. And they also used guilt by association by linking the Holy Land Five to relatives who are members of Hamas. They did many things, and I could talk about this all day. I attended every single day of the trial, but I'm not going to get too into it. But that's a good idea of what took place in the trial. Now, the superb defense team, including Linda Moreno, John Klein, Nancy Hollander, and many others, consistently argued that the Zakah committees listed on the HLF indictment were the exact same Zakah committees that received charity from USAID, UN, Red Cross, and many international NGOs. But, yet again, the Holy Land Five were singled out because of who they were, because they were active in their communities, because they were doing something amazing by alleviating some of the suffering that's going on in Palestine. So the first trial lasted 3 months, and after 19 days of deliberation, again this was in 2007, ended in a mistrial, which was a good thing because what basically happened was it was a hung jury and the jurors failed to reach a verdict on most counts. This was very good news for us, but because they deadlocked on most counts, this basically gave the prosecutors the right to retry the case, which they did the following year. And after essentially the same arguments, the case ended with guilty verdicts, and my father was sentenced to 65 years in prison for giving humanitarian aid to Palestinians. So, just to really quickly, because I probably have like a minute and a half left or something, the appeal is underway, so that's not the end of the story, and the defense attorneys have vowed to take this to the Supreme Court, and I, as well as my father, have so much hope that one day he will be released and he will be vindicated, because I do call him the Palestinian Mandela. So he's currently in the Communications Management Unit, which has been referred to as Little Guantanamo, which we heard about that just recently. So the CMUs are enclosed sections of the U.S. penitentiaries of both Marion, Illinois, and Terre Haute, Indiana, and my father's in the one in Marion. So the thing about that, many people have talked about the restrictions that have been applied, but you know, we basically get 2 phone calls a week and 2 non-contact visitations a month. The phone calls are 15 minutes. It's me, my sister who lives in Maine, and my mother and my entire family in Texas, which really means that I only get to hear from him once every 2 weeks for 15 minutes. And what kind of conversation can you really have in 15 minutes? What kind of real conversation can you have? We did finally visit him at the Marion CMU on Thanksgiving Day 2010, and it had been a year and a half, again, due to punitive actions within the prison. But we traveled all that long way and we weren't able to touch him. We weren't able to take in his scent of chamomile and cedar, a parental scent that in its most peculiar way brings you comfort. But my family and I had to see him behind a plexiglass barrier. And although every aspect of our visit was closely monitored, my father had a way of making it seem like the plexiglass was non-existent. So before my father entered prison, he not only spoke out against Palestinian oppression, he took part in what he called programs with a profound cause. During the immigration march that resulted in 500,000 people pouring onto the otherwise non-pedestrian streets of downtown Dallas, my father too wore white and waved the Mexican flag and chanted "Si se puede." He even, after entering the prison and while being closely scrutinized, my father continues to speak out to this day. And in fact, I received a letter from him not too long ago where he says, quote, "They discriminate against me and others because we are Muslims. This is the same philosophy that imprisoned the Japanese and the Germans, the same mentality that considered blacks 4/5 of humans. I am living through it, however, seeing it in full color, not in theater or in literature." My father's resilience has inspired me to speak out and to write this book and to tell our story. And I hope you will all join me in telling the story and pressuring Congress into doing away with these draconian laws that have authorized all of these cases. I'm sorry if I spoke too much. Thank you.